Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to answer the question of does exercise selection really impact your gains? So we're going to look at what both the research on it shows versus what practical common sense would tell us. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this because the whole fitness industry has perpetuated all sorts of stuff for years of finding magic exercises, right? Everyone's got 17 new magical exercises for this one body part, which we know is complete BS. Now, I'm going to get into the practical elements of it in a minute, but actually the practical side of it, a lot of that is the opposite of what you should be doing. There's common sense should dictate of how absurd it is. But as far as what does the evidence show, does exercise selection itself directly impact muscle growth? No, not really, not significantly. In other words, muscles themselves, when it comes to hypertrophy, we're not talking about joint angle specificity, we're not talking about powerlifting, we're not talking about athletic performance. We are talking about just can you make a muscle bigger, right? That's all we're talking about here. Can we make that muscle bigger? Or all the muscles in your body bigger, which is the better question. Does the exercises you use to get there matter tremendously? Not really. What the muscle cares about is tension and fatigue. In other words, your bicep itself doesn't know the difference between a chin up, a lat pull down, a concentration curl, cheat curl. It doesn't really know the difference. All it knows is that it's being stressed, right? It knows how much load it's being subjected to in terms of how many muscle fibers it has to recruit to handle that load. That's all your bicep knows is the muscle fiber, the recruitment of the muscle fibers. Every fiber in that muscle is either contracting or it isn't. It doesn't care how it gets there. And it will grow in proportion to the load it's subjected to, the recovery it's given, the nutrition it's given, or in some cases, what other substances it's given. Pretty straightforward. And the research over the years has confirmed this. Muscles don't know these things. They don't really know what's stressing them. Now, the rest of your system does. You know, your nervous system, bones, joints, all that stuff, that stuff is impacted by all these things. But the muscles only know stress, right? They only know stress. Either that you're putting enough stress on them that they have to contract that muscle fiber or they don't. That's all they know. So what we know from looking at the studies, a lat pull down builds just as much bicep as a curl does. I know people are going to be like, oh, that's not true. Well, prove it wrong. You go get 20 test subjects and you pay for the MRIs and run them through the programs yourself and prove it wrong with your own funding. But as far as funding that's been done where people didn't have a financial interest in selling you a special sort of bicep curl machine, it's been found that they can't really tell them apart. And if people did enough lat pull downs, let's go to the point of total stress on a muscle. If people did enough weekly volume and workload on the lat pull down, they found that adding curls to it, and it's been done in multiple studies of people with different experience levels, their biceps didn't grow any faster than the people who just did the lat pull downs by adding a few sets of curls in every week. It didn't actually matter. Didn't impact growth. So what does that tell us? Muscles only know stress. Now, am I saying that a lat pull down is the most amazing exercise and am I endorsing lat pull downs for biceps? No. But you could build maximum bicep size off of the lat pull down. It's been done in studies where adding curls didn't add any more muscle. So, looking for magical exercises to stimulate muscles isn't really going to be effective. Occasionally, if you have a weak link in your body, it's because it's being understimulated or some element of it, or it's not being trained through the full range of motion, then we can add other exercises in to help with that, and that will cause more muscle growth, right? And particularly, we run into issues when we have muscles in the body that aren't being trained through their effective range of motion. Those are the muscles that are going to tend to be lagging with our exercise selection, independent of your genetics, right? So that can be a solution, but ultimately muscles don't really care about what exercises you pick. They just know workload. So training programming is actually more important. However, let's use some common sense. Everyone has limited recovery abilities. Everyone has limited time. The majority of you out there, even though you might be at a certain point in your life where you have a limitless free time, you might be a college student, right? Or you're a high school student. Trust me, you have limitless free time. You guys have limitless free time. What you guys think of, oh man, I'm so cramped, I have to study so much, you don't have to do shit. You have not experienced the real world yet if you think that it's a time commitment to be a full-time student for the most part, unless you're doing like a residency or something, unless you're becoming a medical doctor or something that extreme. Trust me, your undergrad is not time consuming. You just have piss poor time management skills. So when you get out of that life that you're in and you have to have a real life, you're going to find time commitment matters. The amount of time you spend in the gym matters. The amount of soreness you get and the amount of recovery you have to deal with from it matters. So this is when I tell people exercise selection does matter. Because if muscles don't care where they're getting their stress, in a perfect world, you should probably minimize the number of exercises you're doing and say, okay, what exercises are going to give me the most growth and give me the development I want? And I'll give you a perfect example. Let's talk about upper body. I'm just going to pick 3 good exercises off the top of my head. Let's say someone was trying to maximally develop their upper body. Let's call that a body part. Everything from here up. That's a body part to me. All right. Upper half. If you got really strong and did enough volume on weighted dips, weighted pull-ups, and the standing press with a barbell, wouldn't every single muscle in the upper body be effectively worked? Every muscle in the upper body being worked through pretty much its full range of motion, most of their functions, yeah. So those 3 exercises done with enough frequency, because that's the other kicker. When you start throwing too many exercises in, it starts affecting frequency of training too, doesn't it? Well, we know, based upon every single study for decades, that training a muscle at least twice a week is necessary for maximum growth. We can argue about higher frequencies, but lower isn't a point of debate anymore. It's not even debated in the research community looking at this. Muscle needs to be hit at least twice a week. You guys see the problem? If you're doing 37 exercises for your upper body, that can become a problem on the training frequency. You're going to do all of them twice a week. Whereas if you were to focus on those 3, and I'm giving that as an example because that's not even the exact 3 I do right now. I don't do my weighted dips, even though I have great dipping bars. Could you pretty much maximally develop your upper body? Yeah. Would you maybe have a few imbalances, maybe lagging here or there? Yeah, but those could be easily addressed probably with 1 exercise. You could probably find the 1 weak point that you're developing off those 3, whether it's your biceps, or your upper chest, or your side delt, whatever happens to be lagging for you, you could probably find 1 exercise to target all of that and end up only having to do 4 exercises for your upper body. And that's what I mean by it matters in a practical sense from a time management perspective and effective use of your resources. It does matter. It does matter. And that's why I stress to people in the real world, when we're no longer, hey, am I in a perfect environment where I'm a full-time athlete with limitless recovery and limitless time? That's a different scenario than 95% of people out there listening. For most people, it is going to be about what can I do to efficiently reach my goal? What's going to get me the most bang for my buck? Maybe I don't need to get 100% of my total gains. I'll be happy with 95% of my gains in the quickest time possible while putting in some hard, consistent work, but with the smallest time commitment. Right? It's efficiency at that point versus optimal. So you might only get 95% results instead of 100%. Because you might have something that lags a little bit somewhere that needs extra work. Okay, fine, but that's easily fixable. That's the efficient way to do it. You pick the exercises that are going to work the most muscle, and you pick ones that are going to overlap it enough. You know, the same token, we could argue about lower body, some variation of squat and deadlift. Your entire upper body is going to get developed off of that if you pick them correctly. Now, someone might say, well, I need more hamstring work. Well, fine, you could throw in a glute ham raise. Problem solved. But for the majority of people, back squat, front squat, something like that, a deadlift, I don't know whether it's a conventional, a sumo, a Romanian, a snatch grip. Those 2 things combined are going to maximally develop your lower body within its limits. Don't get me started on calves. Calves are genetics. So, and if you're not going to compete in bodybuilding, who cares? And if you are going to compete in bodybuilding and you don't have calf genetics, you need to start looking at implants now. That's what you're going to have to do. That's not even going to be an option for you. Don't think you're going to add 5 inches to your calves by training them. You're going to have to put something in them if you're going to go do bodybuilding and you don't have calf genetics. Live with it. Another reason I think bodybuilding is stupid. So, yeah, the only sport that if you don't have the right genetics, you're going to have to put oil or implants into a muscle group to be competitive. But that aside, the point here is that from a hypertrophy perspective, exercise selection doesn't matter as much as people think it does. There aren't magical exercises for a given body part, but exercise selection sure as hell matters to your time management, resource management, and recovery, particularly recovery resource management. It does matter in regards to those things. So we should be looking at where we're going to get the most bang for our buck, right? So that we can get the most muscle in the shortest time possible, with the smallest commitment that we have to make oftentimes. Because for a lot of people, they have other priorities. They have children, they have careers, but they still want to reach, pretty close to maximum levels of jactitude. So it does matter. It does matter in that regard. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.